My name is David, D-A-V-I-D, D-U-S-C-H-Lilly, L-I-L-L-Y. He, she, him, her, you, human.
And David, I know you've been getting a lot of questions, so I'm going to ask what you probably haven't gotten yet first. I noticed that the word love is on a lot of your clothing.
Yeah.
Could you talk about what that word means to you?
Yeah. I was raised in a family that had different perspective on religion. And at a young age, and I realized that people could get divided over the word G-O-D. That people love to argue over the word G-O-D. That God is great for debates, and everybody who's ever gone to war always says that God told me to go to war. And yet, all the holy books I ever read said that the Lord is love. And those who have love have the Lord. And all the others just seem to be bearing bad fruit. So I think it takes humility, and I think it takes faith to say that there's a power, a philosophy, a system that some people call consciousness, some people call the Holy Spirit, some people call G-O-D, but we all agree that it's love. So I feel, for me, it takes more faith to accept that. And it takes a lot of faith to accept that. And all the holy books I ever read said that I would be saved by my faith. So I took a lesson from these holy books, the Bible and the others, to have more faith and call the Lord by their real name, love.
That's amazing. David, I know that everybody in the camp sort of rejects the concept of anyone being a leader within the camp, but I can't help but notice whenever there's important things going on, you seem to be nearby. Could you talk a little bit about? Now I know you were either the last or the second to last person to leave the park. I know that you left it in handcuffs. Could you talk about what you were feeling that day?
I was feeling that I was in the place where a person like me, who's had an inordinate amount of privilege, who grew up in a comfort, segregated suburb, where all the, quote, undesirables were chased away because of the color of the skin or the lack of their employment, in a system that wouldn't employ them because of the color of their skin. I grew up in that bubble, and I realized that, again, there's a saying, unto whom much is given, much is expected. And if a tree doesn't bear good fruit, it's going to be burned up. It's not worth anything. And that, for me, that's just the little role that I play. Half the people on this planet are living on $2 a day or less. And we can walk around and we can distract ourselves from that reality by congratulating ourselves for throwing $1 to a homeless person today. That dollar is what's making almost 1 billion people on this planet homeless. And we need to value each other equally. We need to stop working. If half the people on this planet are working on $2 a day, we need to figure out a currency where everybody on this planet is living on $2 a day, and things are affordable, the things that we need, not the things that we want. If we believe in true brotherhood, sisterhood, familyhood, and equality, and we've got to get through those illusions. Let me just say one other thing in terms of, yes, my mother died when I was 6 years old. We didn't talk about it a lot in our family. Somehow or another, I got it in my head, and it amazed me how then when people die, how easily they're forgotten. And for me, at a young age, I said, well, I don't want to be forgotten. So I tried to get a lot of attention when I was a kid. I wanted people to pay attention to me. And there was a point in my life where I realized that that wasn't making me a real person. And that in order to be a real person, I had to recognize the value of folks like everybody who was in that camp. And everybody right now who's at the border trying to get here, to get away from the militaries that we've sent down there to their home. And that my life was no more valuable, and it didn't matter at all for me as somebody who went through the education and believed all that propaganda, that we're going to give you these things and you will be able to do something better. When in reality, it's the people who do more with less who are actually the productive people. So the people who are kind in that camp, or kind to each other at the border, or kind to each other in the hood. And the people when I was living on Skid Row, who looked at me and didn't judge me by the color of my skin, I got more compassion and treatment of equality from black people on Skid Row than I got from the LAPD. And that taught me a lot about what is really makes a person a spokesperson. You're a spokesperson by your actions and your life.
That's a lot to process. Do you think that the situation in Echo Park Lake is a situation that we're going to see elsewhere?
Say that one more time.
Do you think what happened with Echo Park Lake, not just the ending, but the formation of that community, and then sort of the harassment by some of the neighbors of Echo Park, do you think that that speaks to other communities throughout Los Angeles and the United States?
Well, I think what we saw in Echo Park, again, I've been all over the city. I've been on the streets for 20 years. I've been helping to build homeless food lines in Santa Monica, in Venice, helping to organize homeless people on the Venice Boardwalk, playing my part, helping to create porta potties and toilets when the city shut down those toilets. But what we saw was a perfect example of what the city could be when they stopped getting distracted by their aspiration to have an oceanfront home and their aspiration to live around a bunch of other movie stars in a little privileged community like Venice Beach is becoming, where the emphasis is not on being human, but on being artsy or being a, quote, high-tech creative. What's beautiful about Echo Park is the people of Echo Park, they're largely working class. Their aspiration is just to be human, not to be famous. And they come out, they share their humanity with each other in Echo Park. And the other unique thing that happened in Echo Park is the homeless were just allowed to be. For the last 20, 40 years in Los Angeles, homeless people have been shuffled around from sidewalk to sidewalk to sidewalk. We find a place on the sidewalk, unobtrusive. The police listen to the NIMBYs. They don't look at the good things that that sidewalk is doing to police itself. They don't look at the good things that that sidewalk is doing to reach out and say, help us create something stable here. They just chase us away in 3 months. And so we saw there what homeless people, if you just let them be for a year, what they could accomplish. So that was another key ingredient, I think, there. And then the nature. You know, people who are unhoused, they go through trauma after trauma just before they become homeless. And then when they are homeless, that's even doubled up and tripled up. It's doubled down. And putting people in shelters, even if they're own room, even if it's in a hotel, somehow or another, what we discovered in Echo Park is put these folks in nature settings. You know, in Europe, you can be a murderer. And when you're sentenced to prison in a place like Finland or Scandinavia, they send the folks out to nature camps. Their prisons aren't concrete buildings with bars on them. They're summer camps. And they are rehabilitated. They're not punished. And the recidivism rates for axe murderers, mass murderers, psychotics, who who are considered psychopathic and have to be locked up, they don't lock them up in these cells and make them become even more psychopathic and more desperate. They put them out in nature. And the American healthcare, the mental health system is falling apart. We don't need more pills. I think the other ingredient that we proved at Echo Park is try a little more nature. It's a wonderful, wonderful mental health therapy.
How would you have liked to see the community at Echo Park Lake?
Well,
continue?
I would like to see a community given the crisis that we're in, the mental health crisis, the jobs crisis, the affordable housing crisis. Until we get past this crisis, we have to give people a place to go when they can no longer handle the stress of trying to put 30 or 40 or 60% of their monthly income into their housing. And they're just wading water until they slip underneath and they find themselves on the street or in a vehicle. And so we need to recognize that given the level of the crisis we're in, it's time to start opening up to half of every park in not just the city of Los Angeles, but this entire county, until we get a handle on this affordable housing crisis and the homelessness that is really the end product of it. Unless we stop that feeding into it. And then at that point, if it gets to that point, in another 10 years, we've got half of every park in Los Angeles County filled up with homeless people and people fleeing rent refugees, foreclosure refugees. Then we can turn to the rest of the country and say, we're doing our fair share, you guys step up to the plate. Right now, when they complain about homeless people coming to Los Angeles, they have nothing to say. We're the 7th largest economy on the planet. Where do you want poor people to go? They go to another poor state where they're already impoverished? No, come here where we have the wealth, where we have the resources. $1 billion a year is only 1/10 or 1/3 of 1% of our GDP. A tithe is more than that. And we are not even addressing poverty in this state with a tithe of 10% of what goes into our incredible wealth. So until we get to that point, we need to shut up and we need to start giving.
Awesome. One more question. I already know the answer to this. This is the question that I really hate asking, but I think it's an important one to ask. What is your current situation as far as housing?
I am currently, right now, since they kicked us out of the park, I was offered a couple nights stay in a motel by some friends, and I took it for 2 nights, and that was all I felt comfortable with. Work in this country is in the streets, it's in the communities, it's putting our bodies out there to build love and concern for each other and bring our compassion for one another out where it's needed. And so I felt like I wasn't doing my job. Nobody has to give me a paycheck to know what my job is as a human being, and nobody should have to give you a paycheck to know what your job as a human being. I did that for 4 years when I first became homeless. I went through 4 different shelter programs. I kept waking up every day saying, I need to get a job. I need to do what they're telling me to do. And after going through 4 shelter programs, I finally woke up one morning and I said, you know what, today I'm just gonna do the most productive things that I can do today, irregardless of whether I am seeking employment or not. And out of that, I started with a shopping cart that day, a food line that fed 150 people every week on Tuesdays. And I pushed that shopping cart with some volunteers from Santa Monica College. And I found myself doing a better job and better work for all the community of Los Angeles than I did when I was collecting a paycheck. So the doorstep or the sidewalk that I slept on with the allowances that we had to make, I wanted to make productive. And I found myself more productive on the sidewalk than I did collecting a paycheck.
Thank you so much. Anything that you haven't said that you think is really important to add?
Step out in faith. Put your faith in love, and you will find the Lord that lets you sleep in peace every night. You will find the Lord that fills your heart with joy. You will find the strength that comes from doing real work. You know, love is rather like a muscle. And we all, when we go to the gym, we want to jump on that weight bench and we want to press 375 pounds. And the first thing that happens is to start doing real work, you have to be humble. And you have to admit that you're stepping into a new experience, and you have to start small, and you have to be patient, and you can't just come out once every few months and hand out a plate of food, or lift that weight once every 3 months. You've got to get on a schedule. You've got to reorient your mind to be doing the things that you know your heart wants you to do. Stop listening to your head. Start listening to your heart and start exercising that muscle in your skull to do love. And all the peace of the Lord in heaven will follow.
Awesome. That's, I think that might be the ending quote right there.
David, are you an LA native?
Yes, I am. I'm not city of LA. I'm a Southern California native. I was born in a Marine hospital in Riverside County, Norco. My dad was stationed at 29 Palms. My mother was born here in Los Angeles. She grew up here in the Bell Gardens area. And on my mother's side, they go back like 2 or 3 generations. On my father's side, he came out here from Texas. He was raised by a single mother in a small town in Texas. He came out here, met my mom, and they got married, and then he found himself out of the Marines, and he worked a lot of odd jobs, and he got very lucky, and he got employed for a while as an auto assembly line worker in Van Nuys, and had that Van Nuys assembly line. And then my mother died, and then we went through a lot of turmoil. My dad, having been raised by a single mother and abandoned by his father, one thing that he vowed was he was never going to let his kids be taken away from him. And because he was white, he was able to do that. Whereas a lot of people in other races, they don't get that equal treatment. So I recognize the privilege that I experienced, you know. And I saw the generation that came after me that saw their community genocided when they not only cut off the benefits to try to redress the past wrong, but on top of that, they doubled down, and the biggest drug dealers in that community were the ones that the government funded. The government funded to destroy that community, just like the government funded the police to destroy a homeless community on a small scale. You guys experienced it for a whole decade, or 2 decades, 80s to 2000, of the government to deny you your equal rights. Today, an African American in the middle class is as rare as a white rhino in Africa. After all of that struggle, at the end of World War II, when people said, hey, I went and enlisted in the U.S. military. I fought for this country. I came out. Even Eisenhower said that the U.S. military was going to be integrated.